All right, hello, this is Zankus Watch, and I just wanted to do a quick react to this Jill Stein sort of birthday rally to stop genocide, as she put it, that she did for her birthday. I think it's really fascinating because it goes into the psychology of people like Jill Stein, who use left-wing activism to grift. Right now, she grifted, well, back in 2016, she grifted millions from people who were desperate to stop Trump from becoming president after he was elected. She grifted millions saying she would recount all the votes and Trump would not be president and Hillary Clinton would be inaugurated. Then that money disappeared. And since then, she's been grifting and grifting. Now, I wanted to do a reaction to this birthday rally to stop genocide first of all, because Zankus is on it. This is the Zankus Watch account, so of course I, Zankus Watch, will be reacting to that. Second of all, there's something else that I find so interesting because it gets into the psychology of left-wing grifters like Dr. Jill Stein. She's been a grifter for a long time. It's not just 2016. She's always been someone who did a lot of ostentatious rallies, got celebrity endorsements like Susan Sarandon. She's now sort of cashing in on the fact that she's Jewish and has a Jewish last name and is now lending her face to the pro Palestine movement because they're desperate for Jewish faces to deflect criticism of anti Semitism on their part. Let me just disclose that I, News Anchors Watch, I am also Jewish. I'm speaking from a perspective of another Jew. So just keep that in mind before you start, in case you start getting offended that I'm attacking her ethnicity or her religion. I come from the same religion and I think, Ashkenazic Jewish ancestry that I think she also comes from. So, without further ado, let's go into this.
um, medical debt. 50% of renters who are struggling just to keep a roof over their heads and who are financially stressed just in trying to do that. So that's a lot of people who could unify if we get past this barrier in New York and then we can begin to really run a full bore campaign. If you've got
So she already knows she's talking to financially vulnerable people. She's targeting to people who do have trouble paying their rent or have medical debt. So she's aware that her audience is not like multimillionaires. So if she grifts from them, oh well, I mean, they'll recover. She's grifting from people who actually can't really spare the money, which really shows the depth of evil here. I don't like using the word evil. It has sort of religious implications, but it shows the depth of how disgusting she is. Because yeah, she's targeting financially vulnerable people and she's saying, please donate to my campaign.
got four campaigns that are splitting the vote, it can be won with as little as 26% of the vote mathematically. That much of the popular vote could translate into a majority of the electoral college votes, and we could actually have a win. So if anybody
That's ridiculous, of course, because she's not taking votes away from Trump. She's taking votes away from people whose values align more with Biden than Trump. And also, let's just hear about this. If you had a president who had only 26% of the vote, that means over like 70% of the country voted against that president. We've already had instability with presidents who got like only 45 or 48% of the popular vote but won the electoral college. That's already risky business. But imagine shoving a president into office who only got 26% of the vote. That's a president who comes in with three strikes against her because she came in with only a very small sliver of the population, a very narrow plurality. That's a recipe for instability.
tells you that we're just, you know, we're just tilting at windmills, or we're spoilers, or we don't deserve to stand up for what we want and we'll never get it. Just forget that. Reject that propaganda of powerlessness. As Alice Walker said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We do have the power. The number
Alice Walker's also an anti-Semite, by the way, which is too bad because I love the color purple. I really loved it. But recently, she's said some blatantly anti-Semitic statements. So I wouldn't. I don't know about quoting her. So many famous writers have been anti-Semitic or racist or bigoted, and I don't want to take away from their work, especially if their work is beautiful. Okay, you know what? I'll lay off her. Yes, please go quote Alice Walker. That's fine. I just, let's just a quick caveat though. Alice Walker is anti-Semitic.
numbers line up in this race, this really is the perfect storm. So, sign of the times, hold on to your hat. And I think we need to aim for the stars here because it's actually possible. And however far we get, that is a win, whether we win the White House or we win the day by establishing an unstoppable force here for the long haul to put an end to empire and oligarchy and to stand up and demand.
You're not going to build an unstoppable force with buzzwords. What you are going to do, however, is grift. The buzzwords target the right people, and those are people who have at least some money, who are also somewhat gullible, excuse me, and who can give you money. That's who you're targeting with those buzzwords. And unfortunately, she's targeting people who are financially vulnerable, people who are richer. I mean, she is also a fan of Susan Sarandon. I'm sure Susan Sarandon gave her money. Go ahead, please rip off Susan Sarandon. I'm absolutely okay with Jill Stein taking all of Susan Sarandon's cash. I hate Susan Sarandon, but unfortunately, the majority of Jill Stein's voters tend to be young and financially vulnerable. And she's saying, please donate to my campaign. That's bad.
An America and a world that works for all of us. So, with that, now we are going to turn to another wonderful speaker and activist, Anthony Zankis, who is a professor at Columbia University, who teaches at the
He's not a professor, he's an adjunct lecturer. He doesn't have tenure. He's essentially an adjunct, which is very different from a professor. Being a professor at Columbia necessitates that you have at least a PhD, which he does not possess.
School of Social Work, and he has.
Oh, wow, he's really looking bad here. I mean, he's doing that middle-aged white guy thing where he's shooting from below, so that always looks unflattering. So I'll give him that. He has to get better angles, and it looks like he doesn't know how to work his angles. But still, even from there, you can tell he's looking run down. He's definitely put on weight, and he's just looking like the life just left his eyes. He's not looking good.
Had a long career helping both in education, but also helping people, victims of family violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, you name it. Anthony has been there with people who are struggling. So he's an activist in racial justice.
I will say he no longer does that because there is a court case on file that showed he harassed a female employee. And since then, he does not appear to be working for the organization that was helping trafficking victims and homeless victims and all of that. He's no longer doing that.
Justice, income inequality, climate justice across the board. And I've had the pleasure of doing some webinars with him with Revolutionary Blackout Network, which is how we met. And it's a great honor to have you here tonight, Anthony. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you, Jill, and happy almost birthday.
He sounds terrible too. Our guy's not looking good.
On what is we need to acknowledge a pretty somber occasion, and I just want to make a note that today is 2 years since the illegal occupying army in the West Bank executed Shireen Abu Akleh, who was an Al Jazeera journalist who was also an American citizen. And a subsequent CNN investigation said
Does he have a cold? I think he might have like a cold or he seems really congested. Or just like maybe he's just really, I don't know, he seems really run down.
as well as Al Jazeera, that it was clear that this was an execution and the shots were fired by a sniper. She's been gone for 2 years. And, it's almost as if every day there's another almost overwhelming traumatic thing that happens. And as a social worker, as some
You see, he's not doing social work anymore, and it appears to be just an adjunct lecturer. I don't know. He has a social worker's license. He doesn't appear to be employed. I mean, he's constantly on Twitter. And when he's not on Twitter, I think he teaches a couple of classes for which he gets extremely bad reviews, such as what I've seen. The thing is, though, he talks about trauma, but on Twitter, he presents an emotionally abusive, verbally abusive presence. So anybody, even people who are trying to argue from a position of empathy, or trying to argue from a position of nuance, get called the most appalling names by him. Fools, rape apologists, disgusting. The absolute level of abuse he shoves towards Democrats. And let me remind you that Democrats are a party that is disproportionately female, that is disproportionately minority majority. Most white people are Republicans. Democrats tend to be more diverse, and he shoves all this abuse towards Democrats, which means that he's targeting people who are, um, in terms statistically, more likely to be more vulnerable to abuse. He's aware of this. He is a licensed social worker. He has been trained as a social worker. So when he shoves abusive rhetoric at people online, he is fully aware of what he's doing.
Somebody who works with trauma and who
He's using present tense there, somebody who works with trauma. But as far as I know, all he does is lecture right now. He teaches a couple of courses at Adelphi and a couple of courses at Columbia. I don't know if he's still a social worker, and he may just be keeping that on the DL, but I don't think that's something you would keep on the DL. That's interesting. That is interesting.
was experienced and survived trauma in my own life. This is a lot. This is a lot for us. If we were only in the situation where we could just scroll and see these images of children covered in blood and rubble, we would feel despair. But we are not in that situation. The reason that I am in
He is in that situation, right? I mean, he's a lecturer who spends all his time online. I mean, there are people who work in healthcare who see children being traumatized all the time. There's children being traumatized in Haiti. Like Haiti's going into a horrifying time, but of course you can't blame you can't blame the Jews for that. So of course nobody is going to be talking about Haiti. Nobody's going to be talking about many other places in the world that is experiencing upheaval, and people are definitely not talking about what China is doing in the Pacific towards Taiwan. China is working hard through TikTok to distract all our attention away from Pacific and then go to Gaza, which is an intractable conflict that's been going on for 75 years and just will not be solved because neither side wants peace. But they can essentially use Gaza to distract the world's attention, scapegoat Jewish people because we've been proven to be very effective scapegoats. Go ahead and cause division here, and essentially go ahead and split the Democrats between people who are, younger people who are more sympathetic towards the pro-Hamas side, and older Democrats who tend to be Jewish and are more sympathetic towards Israel. So that's the game here. And of course, that's what these two people are trying to do. They're trying to put Trump in power, which will not only be disastrous for Gaza, but will also be disastrous for a lot of vulnerable people whom they're now trying to grift, saying, we're going to totally bring about that socialist paradise. Just give us your money. And then, of course, that socialist paradise will not appear. Instead, enough voters will break away from Biden to split Biden's vote to the point where Trump will win, and Trump will repeal anything even possibly socialist, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, in the United States. He'll repeal that. So they're actually actively working to bring us further away from any possibility of a stronger social financial network in the United States.
endorsing you and your candidacy is because
Oh, sorry for the quick pauses, but he just sounds terrible. Like, what's going on? He sounds like he has adenoids that are like golf balls.
it is aspirational. When I was involved with Occupy Wall Street, the phrase that I
You see, there we go. That's the last time he was ever involved in any activism. It was a long time ago. It's like 2010, 2011, and Occupy Wall Street accomplished nothing. It accomplished a bunch of trash and feces in the street. Nothing happened because of Occupy Wall Street. Activism takes long, dedicated, hard work, and often it takes decades. And people now have had their attention span so shredded by social media that they don't have the same long, years long, decades long dedication towards tearing down an entrenched social construct that's abusive, that it just isn't succeeding in the same way. But they're pretending that it does. And they say, oh, we're just aspirational, and you dismiss us. We are going to dismiss your aspirations if you don't show the dedication and make the compromises necessary to make those aspirations a reality. And that does involve things like, say, voting for Biden, and then using your vote saying, hey, we are actually very dedicated voters for Biden, so please hear us when we say you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Like, for example, LGBTQ people, trans people have been always very, very dedicated towards the Democratic Party. And consequently, when Biden got into office, he was able to alter Title IX. Now, personally, I don't agree with that, but the way he was able to do that, despite a lot of pushback from feminists, or I should say old school feminists, is because trans people were a huge part of his campaign and really did help him with his margins among younger people. So that's what you have to do in order to make real change, not play dirtbag leftists and try and pretend that a third party is viable. But of course they know this. I mean, I think still Stein knows this. She's very cynical about this. She's just here for the grift. Zankus knows this as well, but I think he still kind of fools himself into believing that he's making change.
Loved the most, the slogan that I loved the most was, "We are unstoppable. Another world is possible." And I believe that's what your candidacy is all about. It is an aspirational candidacy. It is not a compromising candidacy.
Oh my God, the cynicism. This is like what, her third or fourth time running to try and break off the Democratic vote. This is an aspirational candidacy. No, it's not. It's a grift. It's a straight up grift.
In my field, I've worked with children who've been victimized in all sorts of terrible ways. I think about the
Now, also keep in mind, Zenkis does this a lot, that he always refers back to himself and how he's an expert in this and that. I've never heard actual experts do this. I mean, their expertise speaks for itself. He always has to remind people he's an expert because he's incredibly insecure about his actual knowledge base. He's a two-bit adjunct lecturer who tries to use the name of Columbia to boost himself and says that he gave a TED talk when actually he gave a TEDx talk, which is something quite different. I'll get into that later. But when he constantly refers to himself as an expert and tries to show himself as coming from an area of great experience, it shows just how weak and on how just basically on the sandy ground on which his expertise rests.
children in Gaza. A few years ago, I started looking into the research. Even before Hamas came into power in Gaza, researchers around the world who were specialists in trauma said the children of Gaza are the most traumatized children in the world.
I'd like a citation for that. I mean, I think the children in Afghanistan may be more traumatized. How about the children in Iraq? The children right now in Haiti are really going through it. How about the children in Aleppo? Actually, they were begging for death. You see, they only talk about Gaza because they realize what a powerful force anti-Semitism is. It's powerful and it's durable. It has lasted century and upon century. Now, I'm no fan of Netanyahu. He is also part of the problem. In fact, okay, I'm going to talk about that later. However, not on this recording, but later. But they know that anti-Semitism is a tried and true policy for influencing people's votes. That's why they only talk about Gaza, which is a conflict that resulted from something that Hamas did on October 7th. Now, any other conflict that occurred, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine or Assad gassing his own people, did not come because Ukraine attacked Russia or because Assad's own people. Well, actually, that was a revolution. But the fact is, um, what was happening there is that there are children being traumatized everywhere. However, these two are not talking about it because they can't blame the Jews for it. They can't blame the Jews. And Stein is aware of this, and she knows that her Jewish last name and her Jewish background is helping her bring in more money so that the pro-Hamas background can use her and other Jews to say, look, see, we're not anti-Semitic, while at the same time using anti-Semitism to accomplish their goals.
That was in the mid-2000s. And subsequent research since then showed the same thing. In some areas, the rate of post-traumatic stress disorder as high as 70% or more, which is unheard of around the world. That was before October 7th. And
So it sounds here like he's trying to justify October 7th by saying, well, Israel is bad. So, the over 1,300 Jews killed, the mass rapes, all of that from Hamas is completely justified. Also, he's placing the trauma of the Gazan people on the shoulders of Israel when they have been ruled by Hamas, a terrorist organization, since 2005. The fact that he places all blame away from Hamas and onto Israel for the fact that the people in Gaza are being oppressed, including LGBTQ people, women, minorities, all these people are being oppressed. The fact that he's doing this shows that they are really making sure that anti-Semitism becomes enough of a powerful force that it can help swing the election.
think of the children there. And then I think of the young people here in this country and around the world. And I've had the good fortune and I think honor of being able to teach in schools of social work in New York. And one of them,
Your reviews are terrible. Students are saying you won't even show up for class, that your lectures are horrible, you don't review the material, you don't even turn in grades on time, which is terrible, especially for students who are in degree programs. Don't even talk about your teaching. We have read the reviews on Rate My Professor. In the last few years, your ratings have gone way downhill.
being in the Columbia University School of Social Work, where the first encampment in solidarity with Gaza sprouted up and then became a worldwide movement within like a week. These students are our moral compass.
But you weren't there, were you? I think this is so funny. He likes to talk about Occupy, but where was he on the encampments? He was in his apartment tweeting. He likes to pretend he's part of this movement, but he doesn't even show up for his own classes, let alone allegedly. I should put allegedly because this was a review by a student, so it's an allegation. However, he doesn't allegedly even show up for his own classes, let alone to these protests. And yet he's pretending that he's some sort of activist on their level. And they're not activists themselves. They're basically bums and clout chasers who are, using Gaza to try and gain social media fame.
And when I think of aspirational, I think of them. I can't be in a place of despair.
If you look at this, he thinks of these students as aspirational. Zekas has always wanted to be part of the cool young crowd, even as he got older and older and he got literally no accomplishments except, and he wants to be forever young. He does. And he looks at these bums, these privileged, rich, white college students who are spreading garbage on campus, shouting anti-Semitic slogans, basically barring Jewish students from going to class, at one point even barring a janitor from leaving a hall that they took over. And he says they're aspirational. They are not. I mean, he was on firmer ground when he was talking about a reporter in Gaza who got killed because, all right, yeah, she actually was brave to be there. He was on firmer ground talking that when he's talking about these bums, at this point, that's just laughable. They're aspirational. No, dude, they are not. They are not. They are foolishness incarnate.
Because then I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to shut off social media. I'm not going to read. I'm not going to look. Because if I only see those images of children covered in blood and rubble, I cannot do that.
How is he able to help children in real life who endured abuse if he can't even see it as images on social media? Now, don't get me wrong. I think he's mentally ill, so I do think he just to get healthier, I think getting off social media would be a good thing for him to do. But at the same time, he's like, oh, I can't function if I have to keep seeing these children in constant pain. I get that. But isn't he a social worker who helps people who are in constant pain? He should have at least some level of sort of emotional callous built in so that he can deal with that trauma and help heal it, without allowing his own mental health to deteriorate. The fact that he's saying, I can't even deal with that, sort of shows that he wasn't really much of a social worker to begin with. In fact, I don't think he had much experience. I think I'm gonna go into his past in a bit. I do know he has a court case against him that was ended up being, I think, allegedly settled out of court, where a female staffer accused him of harassing and bullying her. And that case went to trial. The judge found enough evidence to say, yeah, this case is going to go to trial. And I believe, allegedly, in fact, this is all allegedly, though there is a court case to back it up, a court document to back it up. I believe, allegedly, she ended up settling out of court.
That without thinking there is a way beyond this, that there's a way we can stop this. Your candidacy makes me feel that, as does the aspirational community.
Oh, this is hilarious. You really think like a rich white woman grifter is going to stop the war in Gaza? The war in Gaza is going to take, well, first of all, it's an outgrowth of a war that's lasted 75 years. So whatever is going to happen to stop it, at least in the long term, is going to take a long, complicated process. There are people like, first of all, I don't think Hamas or Netanyahu being in power will ever make the war stop. Netanyahu has reasons to continue the war. Hamas has reasons to continue the war. Both of them need to be out of power, and that's going to take a lot of strategy, a lot of wheeling and dealing, a lot of stuff that people like Jill Stein and Zankus just don't know anything about. They remain pure. They insist upon purity in terms of their political movements, but purity leads to failure. The real goal of politics, the problem, not the problem, but just the way that politics works is you have to sit at a table with people you disagree with and work out something because they're just as much in charge of the country as you are. So you have to form coalitions with people that you don't like or don't necessarily agree with. You have to do that. And that's something that Democrats know about. This is something that Joe Biden knows about. This is something that AOC is starting to learn. She used to be a progressive. Now she's starting to realize that in order for her career in Washington to continue, she is going to have to sit at the table with centrist Democrats whom she does not like. And you can see this strategy in her mind starting to continue this way. But it's the political purity is the pathway to failure. And that's why Zankus is, looking horrible here in his, lonely looking apartment. And Jill Stein, who at least acknowledges that this is all a grift and looking all polished, is sort of smirking, knowing that she's not going anywhere. This is just a shakedown. She just got to be polished for another couple of hours and she can probably clear, I don't know, a few more thousand from this live stream.
Unity of these students that are leading the way. In my field, I remember reading a few years ago about a story attributed to Margaret Mead. They asked her, at what point did real civilization start? And Margaret Mead, a noted anthropologist, also I might note a woman, because mostly that's where we see a lot of this understanding of the role of compassion in our society. Not to
By the way, Zankus is a misogynist. He overwhelmingly targets women on social media. If you leave Biden aside, most of the people that he calls a ghoul or a liar or a tool of the capitalist democratic system are female politicians. I mean, his presence that he establishes on these live streams is very different from his online Twitter presence.
to be gender biased. I'm just saying historically that's how we've seen it with abolition,
He is gender biased. It's just more towards men, not women.
child labor movement as well. And she said civilization started, we found a femur bone that was healed, because femur bones take months to heal. And if somebody doesn't carry around, feed you, and keep you safe, you will die in the wild. When we were hunter-gatherers, that message is a very clear window into understanding how humans survived. For the past few 100,000 years as a species, the only reason we survived.
And yet, here he is not willing to do the same thing, carry around the person with a broken femur bone. And in this case, if you want to carry the metaphor forward, it means having to go through the uncomfortability of voting for Biden, the uncomfortability of talking to people who disagree with you and coming to a shared agreement and a way forward, because that causes discomfort for people like Zenkus. Because that causes discomfort and it makes them feel like, why should I alter my life and my opinion for other people? That causes discomfort, like carrying around somebody who has a broken femur bone, who can't hunt, who can't gather food, but you still carry them around because it's for the greater good. He is already contradicting himself and his message of political purity, and for trying to make the Democrats suffer, make everybody in the country suffer when Trump comes back to power. Um, he's already contradicting that with this message of, oh, we have to suffer discomfort to carry around somebody who's suffering with a femur bone. All right, I agree. Let's expand that to the political scale. Let's suffer the discomfort of talking to people we disagree with and realizing that we have to find our shared values in order to find a way forward.
Was because we were able to work collaboratively and collectively together to solve our problems. And I think that's what's before us right now. And with your
It's so funny. He doesn't even know what collaboratively and collectively means. It means that in order to work collaboratively, you can't go on Twitter and call everyone a ghoul and a rape apologist. You can't call Democrats rape apologists. You can't call, every person who said, Hamas is actually bad. You can't call them pro-genocide or genocide apologists. You actually have to sit at the table and talk to them in order to find a way forward. That's what working collaboratively and collectively means. He doesn't understand that, of course. He's just repeating buzzwords.
candidacy, I see that. And one other parallel with my work is people who've been traumatized in their healing often feel a disconnection. And I think voters all around the political spectrum are feeling that disconnection. Democrats feel disconnected. A majority of people that voted for Biden see this as a genocide. Republicans feel disconnected from their leaders for reasons maybe I don't agree with, but they just don't feel this.
The thing about Democrats is that they're aware of the extraordinary complexity of the movement, and a lot of Democrats are sort of frightened of the fact that uh, the people who are talking about casualties in Gaza have an ulterior motive, and it's not to stop the ceasefire. They say ceasefire out of their mouths, but in their heads, it's more. Uh, let's get let's have a full force attack on Jews around the world. This has been something that Hamas has said out of their mouths. And the fact is that the student protesters have been saying it too. They've been talking about intifada. They've been, harassing people. And they're not seeing how their own actions contradict their stated goals. So we can say, like, oh, the majority of Democrats think there's a genocide. I'm not going to go into the definition of genocide. I would not call it a genocide. I would call it war. I mean, if you start calling what's going on in Gaza a genocide, then you have to say what happened when America attacked Iraq, which really was unjustified because Iraq never attacked America. Hamas definitely attacked Israel brutally. Israel had no choice but to retaliate. But America, when it invaded Iraq in 2002, Iraq had done nothing. It was just an absolutely cynical move, and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed. Was that a genocide? I don't think so, because it wasn't built on some sort of blood aspect of everybody with Iraqi blood must be demolished from the earth so that we can keep the human population cleaner. That's usually the justification for most genocide. It comes down to like eradicating an ethnicity. What's going on with the Uyghurs is a genocide. I would consider American slavery a genocide. I would consider what the Janjaweed militia did to the Sudanese a genocide. A lot of genocides involve forced rape so that they hope that if there's enough dilution of the blood of the ethnic group that's being wiped from the earth, that ethnic group will disappear. That's not happening in Gaza. What I consider happening in Gaza is war. Um, but again, that's neither here nor there, because whether it's genocide or war, people are being killed. So it's not really a subject that gives me a lot of comfort to try to parse. I know they like to use the word genocide because that word does have an emotional trigger to people who are Jewish, because we do have a lot of historical trauma around that word. So it was with great deliberate intent that people use that genocide to throw it back at Jews, when Jews just experienced a mass murder on October 7th and are now retaliating.
Connection and the suppression of the Green Party and third-party independent voters is exactly a move by the Democrats and also the establishment to further disconnect us. They want us to just basically rubber stamp what they do. Well, what's happening right now is that red line. We
Well, I mean, no, you can just write in your candidate, but you know that your candidate is, so poorly known. It's just basically in it for the grift that no one's going to write her name in because they're just going to stay home. However, the fact remains, like, yeah, why don't you sue the Democrats to get off the ballot? Go ahead, sue the Democrats to get off the ballot, or you can just say you're stay on the ballot, with a better information campaign to pressure state governments to keep you on the ballot. I know they're attempting to do that, but the fact is, when you're so unpopular that they can strike you off the ballot through legal means and nobody's really speaking up on your behalf, you need to do some accountability within your own party. Why do people not give a shit when the Greens get taken off the ballot? That actually seems more like a Green Party problem, not an America problem.
understand if we remain disconnected, this is what happens. This is a genocide.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did Stankus just say that taking the Green Party off the ballot is a genocide? I don't think he did. I think he's just so spaced out. I think he's sick. It really sounds like he's a terrible cold and he might be on NyQuil or something. But it really did sound like he just said taking the Green Party off the ballot is a genocide. I don't think that's what he meant, but it sounded like it.
The only way out is through reconnection. And that reconnection happens through movement politics. That's what's different about your campaign. And I do believe that in New York, I was so upset when the Democratic administration of Governor Cuomo made it almost impossible for third parties to get on the ballot. And the reason they do that, and people aren't dumb, is because they know if they gave us all a fair shot, the Republicans and Democrats wouldn't have a chance in it.
You're joking. No. The reason they took the third parties off the ballot is that the third parties are extraordinarily corrupt. And the third parties basically don't really have the means to get themselves on the ballot and to bring about coalitions to put themselves on the ballot. You know why? Because people like Jill Stein are taking your money and making it disappear. That money should be going into coalition building, but it's not, you know? Check out that smirk on her face. You see her face? She knows that money's going straight into your bank account and then it's going to disappear. Disappear. This Green Party is just another grift for her.
So I'm looking for that reconnection, which is that final phase of healing from trauma. Whether it's a child who's been abused half of their life, or a society that's been abused by a government and corporations and a system.
You see, this is the part I hate, where he talks about child abuse and says, and draws a parallel to, like, what, being in the United States? We are one of the wealthiest, most comfortable nations in the world. We have so much privilege. And the fact he says, like, oh, the Green Party is being taken off the ballot, that's totally the same as genocide. It's totally the same as child abuse. It's so stupid. It's so stupid that he's assigning massive trauma to the fact that the Green Party is so completely incompetent when it comes to just simply getting on the ballot.
System that does not recognize everyone's worth and value. And I believe your candidacy allows us that chance for reconnection. So I'm excited. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for those very inspiring words. And thank you for all you do to help.
Oh, she does not give a shit. She does not give a shit. Look at that. She was barely even listening. She's like, yeah, all right, well, let's keep going on. Let's see. Got any super chats? Actually, I don't know if she's on YouTube. This is a Zoom call. Well, let's see. She's just checking her bank account.
All kinds of people reconnect with each other, and including our campaign with the various movements and student groups and all that you're a part of. Thank you so much for being a part of our gathering tonight. And I'm going to turn now to our final speaker. Some people have been asking in the chat, what can they do if they don't live in New York? So stand by, because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about exactly how we double down, right?
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead here because there's somebody else I want to show before I finish up this quick react. 1 second.
Social media land or here in the room, is anybody able to
this
contribute
person,
the
1
maximum
second.
amount of 33? work. So, Jill, do you want to follow up on anything right there?
Uses your
So this guy calls himself Jason Call.
our president.
All right, 1 second. Come on. Excuse me, folks. I'm just trying to find this. All right, let's look at this.
We've got a Jill Stein 2024 hat. We have a full range of merchandise on the website also. So hats, t-shirts, mugs, tote bags, I want to say almost you name it, but stickers, bumper stickers, buttons, it's all on the website. Please go to the website. When you buy merchandise, that of course does help the campaign. It is a fundraising effort. So please, and yes, as Cindy says in the chat here, it's actually really well made. It's union made, and union printed, and it's very quality stuff. I have the full range of everything. If you are poor college students, what you can do is you can, it depends on where you are. And just so you know, we once we're done with New York, we have about 20.
Look at that. So they literally are targeting poor college students. Now, this person, Jason, look at him. You can just sort of tell from the getup that this person isn't very mentally well. Like he's doing a bit too much. Like it's not just a keffiyeh and the big Palestinian flag. It's not just a Palestinian flag. It has the word Palestine on it, so he totally gets it. The one, the fact that he has his own campaign signs in the background, the guitars, it's a bit, you can sort of tell that he's not really quite, like, I don't know this person personally. I've never examined him in real life, but you can just sort of get the vibe. He's not mentally there. And he is now targeting people. He literally said poor college students and trying to sell the merchandise and trying to get money into Jill Stein's account. This is where the grift comes to the forefront. They're not even really hiding it here.
5 other states that we're going to need to complete. So if you're like, I can't get to New York right now, I can't contribute any money right now, but if you are petitioning in my state, let me know, I can help. Go to somebody put the ballot access link up in the chat here. Jill Stein, and it's a tab on the website, ballot access. You can see the states that we're on. You can see the states that we're actively petitioning in. And there's
Yeah, and once you get your name on those websites, they will be constantly soliciting you for funds, and they will be selling your name to other far leftist grifters, whether it be Cornel West or, I don't know, the RFK campaign. They will be selling your information, and they will be making sure that they try and pump you dry when you do get money there. They are targeting what they call poor college students. In other words, young people who don't really have enough experience of the real world and are perhaps a little too naively optimistic to really separate like a worthy cause, like say the World Kitchen, from a grift, like the Jill Stein campaign.
There's a couple of odd ones, like somebody had asked about Delaware. In Delaware, we need people to register green. If you are a Delaware resident and you're not registered green, go register green right now. Get on the Secretary of State's website. It's an online registration. Register green. We need about 50 more people to register green, and that's what will get us ballot access.
All right, it's getting a little boring.
Going to be challenged is if we are on the ballot. And the only way we're going to be on the ballot across the country is if we push through the dirty tricks here in New York. So I can't thank you enough. This is the time to just dig however deep you can. This is the time to do it.
All right, let me
Thank you
just back
so
up
much,
a bit.
Pierce. That is amazing. We're now nearing $35,000. Kat Kindo, 70.
Holy crap, 35,000. I was thinking like 5 or 6. 35 grand. Do you see now why she does it? She is good at her job. That 35 grand, that's going to a new car for her. That's going to maybe a down payment on a second or third house. That 35 grand is going nowhere except into Dr. Stein's bank account. Okay, that is amazing. Wow. All right, let's go.
If people can give big, if people can give $1,000, again, we're putting that to good use right now. Ballot access in New York is
give $1,000, right? Guess who they're targeting? She literally started this podcast off about talking about people who can't even make their rent, and they are shaking these people down for her campaign that's going to go nowhere except into her bank account. This is really appalling. And her grift needs to be made very explicit. There are already exposés of Dr. Stein and how much she grifts, and she is still grifting. $35,000, if what he's saying is correct. $35,000. That is not pocket change. That's amazing. All right, thanks so much for this teeny tiny pocket recap. I'm going to put this up on the YouTube channel.